Hey guys, Nick here from Just V Studios and welcome back to another movie review, and today we're doing a movie review for Shazam! So it has been a while since we've done a movie review, and kind of the reason for that I was going to shift towards Luke and Dylan, but they just kind of got busy with life and stuff, and I actually got to see Shazam a few weeks early, so I thought, hey, why not it be a perfect time to review it? Especially because I am such a big Shazam fan. I know I say that wearing a Superman shirt, but I am just a fan of the Shazam character, so when I heard that they were making this film, I got really excited and really nervous at the same time. So for those of you who don't know, Shazam is a superhero film about a young teenager named Billy Batson who is a foster kid, and he gets the powers of a superhero and basically turns into an adult superhero when he says the word Shazam. So it's a very superhero big-esque situation where you have the kid in the body of an adult man, and just every possible thing you can think of a kid wanting to do in the body of an adult, they basically do. But now with the added twist of him also having superpowers, and just insanity ensues after that. Now, the fan of the Shazam character and of Zachary Levi, I did enjoy this movie a lot, and I feel like this is one of those situations where I could not imagine anyone other than Zachary Levi playing Shazam. He just has this general enthusiasm of being a superhero that you'd imagine every kid would. And when you're watching this movie and you see him as an adult, you totally, though, believe that there's just this kid inside that body who is just having fun. And from the trailers, you can kind of tell there's this big comedic element. There's actually a very big comedic element throughout the film, and all the scenes with Zachary Levi as Shazam are just awesome. Because my favorite scenes from that most recent trailer are the him experimenting with his superpowers and buying beer, and they really expand on that in the film, and it's just such a fun sequence. There are just so many good scenes that just had me smiling from ear to ear. But this film also has a lot of good dramatic elements from when he's not the Shazam character and he's just Billy Batson. And something that really surprised me was that the villain in this film, while he may not be a perfect villain, is probably the best villain we've seen in a DCEU film. Granted, it's not the best competition, but there are still a lot of good scenes of this villain that make you realize, oh, so now I kind of get why he's doing X or Y, and it makes sense why this is going on. Because my biggest fear with this villain is he'd just be generic, ordinary villain, which, with that said, he kind of is. But somehow this film tries to turn that into an advantage for them, and adding a lot of humor in the fact of that he's generic bad guy, and kind of throwing out some of the tropes associated with that. It's kind of hard to explain, but there's one scene that really made me realize that when you see the movie, you'll be like, oh, okay, they kind of know he's a generic villain, and that's why that's happening, and that's hilarious. So could he be a better villain? Yes. But comparatively to the rest of the DCEU, he's probably my favorite of the villains. But what about that really surprised me was the fact that there are some really dark scenes with that villain character. I mean, it's still you can take the family to see it, but you might want to cover the kids' eyes a little bit when a few of these scenes take place, because it's more gruesome than I expected. And I don't mean that in a bad way at all. I mean that in an awesome way. It feels like some of the more old school, earlier superhero films where they wouldn't shy away from showing you some kind of dark stuff. And probably the biggest surprise for me with this movie is the foster family that surrounds Billy Batson, and how big a role they play in this movie. Because this movie has this huge theme of family, which I didn't really know going into it, so it was really cool seeing that family dynamic of, you know, a family is not necessarily the one you're born into, it can be the one that just surrounds you and loves you. And it's just such a great cast of kids in that foster family. It's so many good, unique personalities that have amazing actors portraying them. Probably some of my favorite scenes are just the scenes where Billy's getting to know some of the different family members. And by far the best one has to be Freddie Freeman. They absolutely nail his character, and he's kind of the biggest connecting factor between kid Billy Batson and adult Shazam. And just kind of that brother dynamic that comes from this movie is just a really cool one that I didn't expect but was totally on board with. Now, I've been saying this movie's praises for quite a bit, but I think it's time that I kind of tell you some of the complaints that I have, because I do have some complaints. So earlier in this review, I kind of talked about all the different tones this movie had, with the comedy, with just the action, with the drama, with some of the more horrific villain stuff. But a problem this movie has is every once in a while it has some trouble connecting the dots. There's not really a strong transition between some of those tones, which just kind of can throw you off a little bit. And I'm not saying this happens every time they switch tone, but there are some noticeably messy tone shifts to where it's like a brrr, okay, we're here now, got it, okay. It just wasn't the smoothest transition between the tones. And another complaint, which I wouldn't think I would have, is that this film has surprisingly little action, which normally it wouldn't be a problem, and it makes sense for the story, but it kind of messes with the pacing a little bit. Because I'd prefer that they take more time to develop the characters, and they do a great job at that, but it's to the point where this film really only has one fight. You don't really get to see much time of Shazam being superhero Shazam. Most of the movie is Shazam messing with his powers. It's very kind of origin story-esque in that regard. And some of the action scenes before that first fight are very much so Shazam running away from the action as opposed to an actual fight. I did enjoy that last fight. It was just kind of a bummer that was all we got of Shazam really being Shazam. But hopefully that's something that a sequel can work on. And finally, I don't know what it is with DC, but for some reason there are some moments in the film where the writing is just off. And it's so hard to explain, because I couldn't pinpoint it to a singular scene. And it's not a problem that Marvel movies have or some other movies in general have in terms of superhero films. Just for some reason DC, every once in a while there's a line that just, it doesn't sound right. And it's not all the time with this movie. This is definitely not the worst offender in the DCEU roster, but there are definitely a couple lines and a couple moments where it's like, that felt off, that didn't feel genuine. It was 100% transparent that was just a line a writer wrote down in a writer's room. Overall, though, I did really like Shazam, and I think it's definitely a step in the right direction for DC, because the last couple solo films that we have gotten have been awesome. And just to let you know kind of the ranking, at least for me, in terms of the most recent DCEU films, probably goes Aquaman is probably my favorite, then Shazam, and then Wonder Woman, which is saying something because Wonder Woman is a good superhero film. But have you seen Shazam? If so, what did you think? Let me know down in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts. And please, like, favorite, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with all your friends. And I will see you guys on the next video. Stay classy. Later. Shazam!